Who knows?
It is.
I've never done this before.
Neither have I.
When they invited me, I was like, this is a little bit outside of my comfort zone. Like, I don't really, this is not.
But the topic of the conversation isn't like we're talking about the annexation of Puerto Rico. We're talking about art.
Yeah.
Correct? Yeah.
Right.
Specifically your art.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, in my
That's
pots.
great.
And
Yeah.
I don't know, I
pot specifically.
yes.
Okay.
But I don't normally, usually, I don't even know where my pots land sometimes. They go into people's homes and I don't necessarily see them in use ever. Other than when I take them home and use them or give them to friends, but, a lot of my pots, I don't know where they land.
Is that exciting to you to think about it like that way? Or it's kind of like sad? It's like, oh, it's like when you see it leave. It's like, my puppy had puppies. And now, like, where are they going to go? What are they going to do to that puppy? They got called something different than I would have. Is it like that?
Oh, actually, when I hear about somebody using a pot other than the way that I was hoping for or intended.
How else are they using it?
Well, like sometimes I've heard, that my cups are being used as vases, and I'm like, well, that's interesting. Or like a pitcher is getting used as a vase, or like,
okay. You said a pitcher.
A pitcher,
Oh, okay, yeah.
pouring vessel.
Yeah, like that. A pouring vessel. Yes, indeed. Go on.
So like a friend's mom, she bought a pitcher and she gave it to her mom, and then she sent me a photo of her mom using it as a vase. And I was like, well, it's fine. And that's interesting.
It doesn't sound fun. It sounds like you're like, no, that's not it. I made that. It's supposed to be for something else.
Well, I'm always curious to see when they get used for something else, like what that thing is. So like I make these little like footed dessert dishes is what I think of them as, but other people use them for like candy or coins or keys or other weird things. And when I hear about that, I'm like, oh, that's really interesting.
When in the process of making something, are you like, oh, this is what I want this piece to look like and have its function? So when you have it in your mind, it's like, I have this idea for this. You have that idea before you even start the pot? Mm-hmm. So it just, you have this picture in your head, and you just chase that picture.
Yes, and or I draw it first.
Okay.
I have to draw my pots a lot before I even sit down in the studio and weigh out the clay and start working with it. I'm drawing, and I'll draw like the same form over and over and over again, of course, over the course of like maybe even months, and then one day I'll be like, okay, I feel like I've thought about it enough, and now I'm going to try to make it. And then sometimes I'll make one or two, push them all the way through the process, like fire them and take them into like, put them in the kitchen and see how they work, and then I'll learn from that and I'll go back and I'll tweak it, remake it, particularly if I'm going to make a bunch of one particular thing, or if it's a form I don't really make. So if it's something new.
So let's say it takes you one pot, it takes maybe a couple months to plan out. Once you have the plan of action between your hand and the clay, is it anywhere near 2 months, or are we talking like 2 days, or?
Like how long does it take to make?
Yeah. Once it's actually you've spent 2 months like conceptualizing in the design phase. Or do you hate that question? I know all artists hate the question.
I don't know. It's hard to like. I don't know. Like I could throw one of these pretty quickly, probably 5-6 minutes, maybe. I don't know.
Really?
They're pretty quick. But then there's like so much that has to happen later. Like it's not. I throw it and then I attach the handle like all at once.
What do you mean by throwing it?
Potter's wheel. Like Ghost.
How many times have you had to use that analogy in explaining?
I try to avoid it usually, but for you, I brought it out.
I can get there without needing the Ghost. I do love Patrick Swayze. Anytime we can work him in a conversation.
Okay.
I pour some of my tea out for now.
Okay, so I throw.
So after you Swayze.
After I Swayze.
That sounds so cool.
I don't know. It's dirty. Then I let the clay.
I saw it. It was very dirty. Cleanliness was not the goal.
No. So then the clay starts to set up, and it starts to, once it kind of holds its form and you can handle it, then I turn them over, and then I trim them, which is sort of like carving, removing material. Actually, a preschooler called it peeling one day, and I was like, yes, peeling. She's like, you're peeling the clay.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, I am peeling the clay.
So when you're doing all this, are you just like no one else around, just you, no headphones, just totally into it, or it's like you got the Last Mohican soundtrack on in the background?
Yes, no, I actually listen exclusively to soundtracks that Swayze was in.
Serious? That's awesome. That's what I call all in. Right? If you're gonna do it, you might as well. I just see like Unchained Melody is playing on a loop.
Yeah.
The whole time. And if it's not, then that's just don't tell me that.
Exactly.
But like a lot of people, it's like they have to have like the same like. I learned from writers that they all write at the exact same desk, listen to the exact same thing, or not listening to something, or headphones on, or something like that's kind of like they get in their mindset and then they just go. Do you have anything like that?
Oh yeah, like I put the phone, like I bury my phone in towels so I can't hear it buzzing.
In towels?
In towels. I have studio towels.
Oh, okay. I see.
So I just put them in the towels. Put the phone in the towels.
So your towels are just there for the phone. Or
and my hands.
Fair enough.
2 different towels.
Okay.
The phone goes in the clean ones.
Right, yes. It's a very dirty process. I've come to learn.
And very dirty. And then I listen to music, or lately I've been listening to audiobooks, and that's actually been really awesome.
You don't find that distracting when you're working, though?
It depends on what I'm doing. If I'm glazing, I actually have to have, in a way, more focus, and I need to be able to hear myself think. So when I'm glazing, I listen to music that I know really well, so I can sort of tune it out. But when I'm throwing and trimming and doing the kind of the wet work, I guess, then I don't need. I've done it so much. I've been doing it, making pots for 14 years, I guess. So I can I can pretty much throw blindfolded.
So is glazing the most important part of the process or the toughest part of the process? Or both?
I find it to be very challenging. I guess it's not that challenging, but it's the one where I find myself thinking really hard about each decision and making
Why
sure
is
I
that?
get it
Why would
right.
you, what is it about it that you're so focused on when you say when you're doing it?
Like imagine you're getting dressed for an event, and you're thinking about.
I will tonight.
Right, exactly.
MC a middle school, elementary school talent show.
So you're probably going to think about like how the different elements of the outfit are going to go together. And,
Am I?
And I don't know. Maybe.
Stop telling me how to dress. Sit in your tower over there that you made. Anyway, yes, go ahead. Yeah, you're right. Yes, I'll think about deeply.
You'll probably think about like the shoes and how the shoes may or may not go with the top, and how is this coming together, and what does this maybe what does this say about you? And so it's kind of like that. Like what does that color say versus that color? What does that texture feel like in hand? What does that texture look like or color in relationship to the food or the beverage or anything like that?
So it's like your personal, that's your moment to really put your imprint on the piece. That people, when they look at it, they see, okay, there she is in that moment, that part.
I guess, but my imprint is there, and my decision making is there through every step. Like, it's that step is just. I feel like it's more complicated for me. But then I've also been doing all these projects recently that involve like 14 or 15 different glazes where there's all these transitions, and so then it is like really complex glazing. Like I mentioned the cylinders where they transition from like a pale yellow to that dark green, and like figuring out all those transitions and how to make that work. It's pretty complicated.
There's an analogy in sports where you play basketball now, it's like, oh, as soon as it leaves my hand, I know it's going in. Is there a moment when, during the process when you're making something, where you're like, ooh, I know at this step right now, this is going to really be good? Or you have to really wait until the end to see what it turns out like?
I find it to be fairly nerve-wracking until I open the kiln. There's so much that could go wrong.
But that sounds exciting though at the same time. Then you open up, it's like, oh, what is it going to look like? I'm like, oh,
Everybody
it's like a
thinks
surprise.
it's like, ooh, it's Christmas, like opening
Yes.
a present. It's not. At least not
It's
for me.
not?
Not for me. For me, it's like, you put on all this work and you hope it works but I guess the reason I keep coming back to clay and the reason why I love working with ceramics is there's just so much to learn, and every time I open up the kiln I'm like, what happened? Why did it happen? How did it happen? And so I'm examining each piece to see and learn from it. And there's so much to learn about ceramics that I feel like I could study it for a lifetime and still there's more to know.
It's a good question about, like, I'm with you, like, I love learning,
Mm-hmm.
and I love practicing, but it seems like art is a little more difficult in that regard. Like, when I talked to Stanley Sheldon, who's the bass player for Peter Frampton,
Mm-hmm.
he would talk about when he'd practiced like the same riff over and over again, and if anybody was in the room, they'd go insane. Because, like, please play a different note now. But as an artist like yourself, who do you get a practice at all, or is it really just each piece is a practice in its own?
Oh, no, it's very much practice.
Like, is there a way for you to practice any of the parts that go into making it?
Well, I practice all the parts. All the glazing, the throwing, the trimming. It's all practice. And I mean, some of my favorite things to make are the most basic and elemental, and they would be, I guess, akin to a musician playing a chord. I love making cylinders, and that is like the first thing you learn when you sit down at the wheel and you're learning how to throw something on a wheel. You start pretty much with a cylinder, and to this day, I find them to be one of the most challenging forms to throw, but also the most satisfying when you get it right and you know you've got it right.
Sure, high risk, high reward.
And you kind of, I'm, humming along and like, okay, I can do this. And, I did this project where I made 220 little tiny cups, and I called them buzz cups, and they all had these bees all over them, and they're riffing on, well, they were nodding to, there was a beehive that was put on the roof of the art center. And this was when I was the resident artist there, and I wanted to sort of honor the bees that were being put on the roof. And I was asking myself, how many does it take to make a little hive? And so
as many as you can handle.
Right, and I got really good at throwing them. But I never got tired of throwing them. And when I hand painted all the bees, and again, I got really good at hand painting bees, but I never really got tired of it.
That's good, right, though? I mean, every time if you're excited more and more about what you're doing, I mean, isn't that the goal? It's like the moment it's like something doesn't become exciting, it's like, uh-oh, what did I do wrong there?
Yes.
Because if you ever walk into the studio and you're just like, ooh, I'm not feeling it right now, it's like, oh no, it's like gotta be like a bad sign.
Well, that's a very real thing, too.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. And then you have to figure out, how do you get around it?
Hmm.
I mean, maybe that's not for everybody, but I definitely run into that.
How do you get around it?
I don't know. It's almost like you have to trick yourself or reward. I have a friend that calls about he's like carrot and stick.
Sure.
So carrot's the reward, stick is the punishment, and so whatever it takes, whichever one it takes to get in the studio and get making. Because once you get some momentum going, I feel like once I get going, I do better. But it's that getting started is often the trickiest.
So do you ever have, I guess, writer's block?
Oh yeah.
And that's the key to getting around that, is just either the negative or positive reinforcement to get across that writer's block.
Yeah, and keep showing up. Keep going to the studio. Even if keep touching the clay, keep drawing, sometimes I'll do something other than clay to kind of, because I need to draw or I need to, I've been learning about printmaking. There's a kind of another way to work through ideas.
I like your analogy, the momentum, and I could feel very much the same way. Like when I'm writing a script or a skit or something like that, I can't just start okay, what's the beginning gonna look like? To me, it's always okay, if I'm writing a song, here's a line from the chorus, or this scene I really want to be in there somewhere, and then I'll build something around that. I just can't be okay, we're gonna start from the beginning now, let's trot down it all the way.
Mm-hmm.
It's no, it's maybe the conclusion will happen first, and I'll just write that, and then other pieces will kind of fit in.
Yeah.
It's all the key is momentum. It's like if I can just write, and edit later.
Mm-hmm.
Or just like thinking it out in my head so much.
Yeah.
And then putting it on the computer is exhausting to me.
Right. Oh, totally.
And I'm sure like this is a very similar analogy in that what you're doing as well. It's like once you get going, and then you see, ooh, I like that part.
Right.
And then it becomes addictive.
Well, and then it's also very much like I don't have it all figured out before I sit down, even though at the beginning of the conversation it sounded like I do. But a lot of times, it's like something has to be on the back burner and percolating while I'm working on something else.
Like,
And
what do
then-
you mean?
And then,
What's on the back burner?
well, like I have a commission coming up that I'm working on, and it's been sort of percolating on the back burner, but I haven't actively been doing it. But I've been making other things to like warm up and work through the problems of those other forms and other things.
Perfect.
So as a way to sort of prime, I guess, and get the machine going so that I can work on that commission. And I'm thinking about it as I'm working on other things.
Oh, so you're working on one thing, you're thinking about a bunch of other things as well.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
You know, like
Yeah.
if you cook dinner and you got like 4 pots on the stove or whatever, the commission is the one that's like, it just needs to.
That's why I grill. So I don't have to have this problem. I want burgers, different temperatures, throw it all on the grill. Chicken, asparagus, mushrooms, corn.
But they have different cook times.
So I'll just take them off when they're done.
Okay, well.
I'll make them stay the same. I don't care. I don't care. Some will be burnt and something will be underdone. I can live with that. the stress that happens because of that is worth it. The lack of stress, I should say, is worth it. I like how you're cooking analogies too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've only started to learn how to cook because of pots, I think.
Why is that?
I didn't really know how to cook, and then, like, I don't know, I was making pots for like 7 or 8 years, and somebody mentioned, you might learn a lot about pots if you actually knew how to cook. And I was like, what? And I was like, So then I started, like, teaching myself little things, how to cook certain things. I mean, like, I knew how to make, like, toast and macaroni and cheese, but I didn't really know how to, like,
That's
do
all you need.
I know, I was existing perfectly fine.
Yeah, whoever said that is ridiculous. Clearly has never had toasted macaroni and cheese.
Right?
I know.
But then I started, like, learning how to teaching myself how to make cookies. And, which was interesting because the chemistry in a cookie is actually not that different than, like, formulating a clay body or making a glaze in a weird way. Like,
It's like 1 part sugar and
like figuring out what all the different ingredients mean. Like,
Yeah.
in my mind, I sort of translate them into clay materials.
They put going together.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm starting to get the analogy now.
Yeah, so like chocolate chip cookies are like, the chocolate chips are like, I don't know, the colorant.
Right. And then when you open up the oven, it's like, what did you get?
What happened?
Exactly. Right.
And then I give them away.
Yes. And people probably use them differently than you think they would. It's like,
Well, I don't know
stuff
what.
them in their face. They don't like savor it like you want them to. It's like, no, I want you to bite every 2 minutes.
Oh, that's no.
Otherwise, they won't savor.
It's okay if they don't say fruit.
It is?
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I just like giving them away.
It is nice. Or selling them, rather.
The cookies or the pots?
The pots.
Oh.
I thought we were still a metaphor here.
Oh no, the pots. I mean, I give some away, but
Yeah.
mostly I try to sell them.
A lot, yeah.
A lot more work in a pot than a cookie.
That's true. That's a lot true. I must admit, I haven't made cookies in a long time, so I don't know. That means we're going on a roller coaster. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Thank you for having a conversation with me.
Thank you for having a conversation with me. I
How
learned a lot.
was your elder?
I left some in there if you want some.
What-
It's
what
so
was it?
good. It's elderberry limeade.
Oh, I love the color in the cup.
Yeah, get in there. Yeah, I'm telling you, it's good.
That one's lighter. The cup is lighter. Feel that one. Sometimes I don't nail the weight every time. That's what I'm working on.
I like heavier
too, because I think it's a little bit.
Are you sure though?
I think this one's too light down here.
I don't know. I just pull at the same time.
All right. Yeah.
Now switch hands.
It's too light. I feel like I'm just gonna like huck it over my shoulder.